Welcome to the Untenable podcast, a podcast about all things pop culture. Well, most things pop culture. Movies, comics, TV, video games, and really just about anything that pops into our little brains. So sit back and enjoy the Untenable podcast.
You are clear all the way up to the mandrel.
Hi, my name is Winifred.
Hi, my name is Werner Brandis. My voice is my passport. Verify me.
So what's the first topic we want to discuss this evening? You mentioned a movie.
Well, first, my name is Mike, and my voice is my passport.
My name is Jason, also known as Jay. My voice is my passport. So, are we going to talk about sneakers? Is that what we're going to talk about?
No, I just have to reference sneakers anytime I can, because not a lot of people appreciate it.
It's a fine movie.
But what I was thinking about the other day, what I was texting you,
Yeah.
what I think the biggest flaw in the Terminator movies are.
Okay.
You know, they make all this, they make this big deal about the Terminator is a killing machine. You know, it doesn't stop. It doesn't do this. It doesn't do that. It also doesn't kill very well.
I was uncertain as to what you were talking about, and then you made some pretty valid points, because the more I thought about it, you're right. I mean, we watch any good chase scene in either of the first two specifically, and those bullets are going everywhere but Michael Biehn or Edward Furlong.
Right. Anytime you see these things, they're firing from the hip. They're never aiming down the sight.
No.
They're never pulling headshots. It's a machine. It's a computer. It should never miss a shot. It should never fire from the hip. It should be way more efficient with weapons. It shouldn't even need a rifle.
So it should be like the difference between an infantryman firing from the hip, spraying downfield or downrange, versus like a Navy SEAL or a commando who's trained to just snipe with iron sights.
Right. It should be a stone cold killer. It should never, like in any Terminator movie, you have the scene where the machine puts its hands on a hero.
Right.
Right, it puts its hands on it. It ragdolls him. It throws him around. It throws him across the room. No, if this thing was a killing machine, it would put its hands on you and it would crush your head.
Because we know there's several times where we get to see the power, the height, the actual physics involved in their grip. We could see the damage that it can do.
Right, they can crush metal. They can crush cars. They can punch through cement walls.
They could crush themselves if they had to.
Right,
like
but
their own framework.
But when they get a hold of a person, their first thought is, I'm going to
shake the shit out of
I'm
him.
going to throw him across the room. I'm not even going to snap his neck. I'm not going to pull his head off. I'm not going to pull his arm off and beat him with it. Its thought is, I'm going to throw him. And I never get that.
Okay.
It's just not efficient. It should be able to pick up a brick, a rock, a stop sign, and
Well,
it should be able to kill you like that.
The closest way I can address that would be as to when I was a kid and I was playing with my action figures. Whatever, G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever it was, and I was, in my head, the story that I was playing out came to that climactic battle. I did everything to prolong that battle. I gave my characters, every, oh, he tripped, and the other one now has a chance to uppercut him. And instead of, if I were to frame it like, oh, we're playing right next to like a imaginary ledge, and my two action figures, in theory, one of them could kick the other right down the ledge. But that's anticlimactic. One could just walk up stealthily without the other knowing and just put two behind the fucking ear. But I want it to last as long as possible because I like the dexterity of a G.I. Joe, for example, and I want to make the cool sound effects. I think that's the real life version of that, where a movie producer is saying, hey, we're pouring millions of dollars into this. We want to see people get thrown around. We want to see glass broken. We want to hear broken bones. We want to see blood fly. We don't want to see a crushed skull 10 seconds after the killing machine shows up.
That's fine. You could easily get around that by surrounding the hero with cannon fodder. He's got a team of people with him, and it just starts tearing through these things, popping heads off.
But there's no dramatic tension
so
because
that the
it's
hero
just...
can run away.
But see, that's the thing. There's no dramatic. It's not an issue of the hero running away. To me, I think it's the issue of the hero has to be put through hell and back, but not quite death.
I'm just saying, it's false advertising. It's not a killing machine. For me, my money.
Well, he went through those other people. He went to the wrong Sarah Connor really quickly. Like, he fucking dispatched her within 5 seconds.
They were red shirts. But for me, the real killing machine in movies is the xenomorph from Aliens.
Yeah.
Because anytime that thing got within 5 feet of somebody,
it was over.
Dead. No one ever escaped its hands, its teeth.
It was also bleeding acid. It also had a razor sharp tail that it could whip around faster than most of our reflexes could fire off.
Right. The hero's answer for the xenomorph was always nuke. We have to nuke
a whole planet.
We have to blow up our ship. We have to blow up the city. We have to blow up the complex. It was never...
It was unstoppable.
Hey, let's if we can just put our plan together, we can take these things out. No. That was a real killing machine, not the Terminator. Terminator's weak.
Whoa. But, was it Terminator versus Aliens or Terminator versus RoboCop?
They've all
crossed over, right?
Yeah.
I remember I had Terminator versus RoboCop, the comic series, one of the story runs, and it was pretty awesome. We'll have to come back to RoboCop because I do want to talk about the fact that I saw it just the other day. I want to give my comments and I want to know about your comments about it. But I forgive a lot of things, and I notice as we get older, I notice you pointing out a lot of like childhood shattering moments for me where my fucking bubble of this is how I understood cinema, this is how I understood physics to be. Like much like Kevin Smith when he talks about everything I know in life I picked up from movies. I am very much the same way, but of course, in reality, I know certain things to be different than what is presented in film. But I always liked the Terminator simply because it was interesting to see them tear through the cannon fodder before they got to the heroic battle. But that's where I had just understood, like, these guys are lucky to get out unscathed. Not, this was a faulty model. They sent the wrong fucking machine back. This is the lemon that needed to be corrected. So, hey, maybe they'll address that in the new Genesis, the movie. I don't know. Because I think it's Alan Taylor directing it, who did a lot of, like, Game of Thrones episodes.
Right?
And Thor 2, yeah. So,
I'm not saying it's not a good movie or a cool character. I'm just saying, as far as killing machines go,
it's not quite a killing machine.
He's lame. He's lame in the way that the Predator is also lame because this thing is just hubris. It's always getting killed by one person, most of the time without weapons.
Yeah.
Something goofy like, he drops a tree on it.
Well, but, okay, see, the Predator is just a skilled hunter.
Okay, but I'm saying,
it's not a killing machine per se.
It's not a killing machine.
Right.
When a Predator wants to hone his skills, he doesn't go up against Terminators. He goes up against xenomorphs.
Okay.
So he goes to a real killing machine to learn how to kill. So they're all lame except for the xenomorph.
Well, but if memory serves, the Predator movie is like a sci-fi action version of The Most Dangerous Game, where man is literally being hunted, but not by man, by extraterrestrial force, heretofore unseen. But in the book, if my memory serves, I had to read that in middle school or elementary school. The hunted becomes a hunter and triumphs out of their own wits. Now, to think about it, though, if they were hunting a general, like, schmo off the streets, they probably wouldn't stand a chance. Like, if the central focus of Predator 2 in the city had been a guy who had no, training as a cop, no law enforcement or military training whatsoever, I mean, that movie, in theory, should be over in about 10 minutes most.
What if that schmo was Ice-T?
He was the Predator in...
Surviving the game?
Yeah,
was
he was the Predator in that movie because he looked like it. And that's not a comment. That's just a fact. Look it up. It's online. But if you think about it, the reason why Dutch was able to do a lot of it, I mean, we got to see his process. We got to see him forge his weapons. We got to see his ingenuity as a commando, if you will, no pun intended. But as a a highly trained operative / special ops guy. Now, it is not funny per se, but it is odd that his compadres, the closest one, the one who lived the longest, was the Native American fella, the Billy, Sonny Landham.
Who only died because
he stopped to cut his chest. Yeah, he stopped to cut his chest open and take it on face to face, so that he and the girl could go further. But Bill Duke got dispatched pretty quickly. Carl Weathers got dispatched relatively quickly. Jesse Ventura, which maybe that was a good thing considering his name these days, is going through the mud pretty harsh. He got his chest open, so he looks like a stuck pig, being roasted. That guy from that TV show, The World of Worlds, remember the '80s World of Worlds TV show?
Shane Black got it pretty bad too.
Well, he's the first one to get it.
Yeah.
He got his spine ripped right out.
Apollo got his arm taken out.
Yeah. What's that guy's name? Richard something was the one guy who made it kind of towards the end, and then he had a Chavez, right? And then he had like a tree stump take him out, right, or something like that.
Yeah, he got hit when they were going to the chopper.
When they were going to the chopper.
Yes, that scene. He got hit from a tree
blast.
fire or something.
Okay. But for the most part, I mean, they all, not to say that they didn't put up a good fight, but when they were against human adversaries, they cleaned house. That's what they did best. Remember when they raided the drug camp and they showed those motherfuckers what's what? And that's what they did best. This is something brand new to them. So I'd say they lasted a good while, and it was truly matched. In other words, it was warriors against a warrior. He had the Predator had technology on his side, and that's I would argue he had size and better technology on his side. The way he took him out from afar come on, he basically sniped him like a punk in any multiplayer game. When we play Call of Duty, we spawn and we get hit by some punk who hides all the time. It's like, great, thanks, cool guy 325.
But what I want to know is when Shane Black remakes Predator.
Oh, yeah.
Is he going to recast the Bill Duke role to Peter Dinklage?
What? What is that? Are you saying it was stunt casting in the first place?
Just like X-Men 3, you had Bill Duke as Trask.
That would be dope.
And then you got Days of Future Past.
It was Peter Dinklage.
And that still makes no sense to me. And even though everybody says X-Men 3 Last Stand is horrible, it's not horrible. It's fine. It's okay. It's a movie.
To be fair, whenever it's on TV, I will watch it.
Yeah.
Whereas I have a hard time sitting through X-Men, the first one. For some reason, I think the continuity, I can't go that far back and accept all the stuff that happens in X-Men from 2000, like the first one. I just have a hard time. So I always pick up right at X2 and then X3. I kind of forget. It's almost like, okay, and I'm going to go against the holiest of holies. It's like I can't sit through the first Star Wars, A New Hope. To me, it's just boring. I can't sit through that. I want to jump right into the dark stuff, so I go to Empire. And then I want to go through the mediocre stuff, and I sit through Jedi. Well, it's the end of that story, I have the same feeling about the quote-unquote first part of the first trilogy of the X-Men saga, whereas I can't sit through the first one, but then there's that second one that I think is the best. That's the Empire of their saga. And then the third one is like, well, I'll watch it if it's on TV. Now, I hold it in high regard, hold Jedi in higher regard in that comparison than I do X3 Last Stand. However, I still like how things turned out in Days of Future Past without going into spoiler territory with that. You know.
Well, the only one I think I have trouble with is X-Men Origins Wolverine, because
It's boring, I thought.
you got that, but it does a little bit of Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool in the beginning, which is kind of cool, but then they ruin it at the end.
Yeah.
And then, again, it's a movie with Wolverine and the sharpest metal on the planet,
Right.
who doesn't cut through anybody. He doesn't decapitate people, and I know you can't have it be a rated R movie.
Yeah, that was the big thing.
But still, the movie's a little too goofy for me. I like the second one, where he's in Japan.
That's a good movie.
That one I can watch.
Well, I remember reading a tweet from James Mangold, and I don't know if it was Slash Film who pointed it out or somebody pointed out that he tweeted out his actual influences, the tone he's trying to set. And he tweeted out a bunch of cool movies, one of which was like, one I can remember, if I'm not mistaken, now the name escapes him, but he had a list, and a lot of them were from the 70s. And he was focused on the 70s character-driven drama. That's what the influence for Wolverine was about, you know. And I see it, but he also had Western influences in there too, some John Ford stuff. And I can see, I'm not saying that he's mimicking or he's, completely ripping off that style, but I can see the influence throughout his movie. So I really enjoyed Wolverine, the Wolverine, I should say, a lot more than I thought I was going to. I mean, the last movie James Mangold had done before that was Night and Day, that I can recall. With exactly, shaking your head like that's the
Cameron
one.
Diaz?
Yes, and Tom Cruise. And believe it or not, I actually enjoyed The Killers, which was that summer's Deep Impact versus Armageddon of a mixed identity or secret identity assassin movies with Katherine Heigl and Ashton Kutcher and Tom Selleck. That was like a good movie compared to Night and Day, in my opinion. So I didn't have a whole lot of initial excitement, but then I have to remember the pedigree that Mangold had set before him. I mean, he's an Oscar winner. Or no, he won, his movie won an Oscar. I don't know if he did, because he did Girl, Interrupted. So I had to remember where he was coming from with it. And he does a lot of character-driven stuff. He also did 3:10 to Yuma remake, which I thought was pretty good, too. So, going back to the whole Shane Black thing, I know you're being punny with the whole idea of Peter Dinklage taking over the Bill Duke role. But I think I'm excited because just about anything Shane Black does, after I saw Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I was like, okay, this guy's back. But he didn't do anything major for at least, 5 or 6 years before.
Did Iron Man 3?
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But before that, I mean, before his name was thrown in, it was like 5, because I think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was about 2005, 2006, maybe, in that ballpark. I didn't see it until it was out on DVD or cable, one of the two.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see this. I'd heard great things about it, and I heard that was the comeback. Like, that was going to bring both Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr. back.
Val Kilmer was so funny in that.
Gay Perry.
I loved him in that movie.
But it was fantastic. I mean, and there was a moment in Iron Man 3 where one of the guards sounded and looked almost exactly like Val Kilmer when they were in the compound and he was tied up to that bedpost and they were about to torture him or whatever. One of the guys with the ponytail, I thought that was Val Kilmer. And I was like, oh, that's awesome how they brought him back into it. But I looked up the credits and it's actually some stunt guy who is friends with Shane Black. And I think he actually is the stuntman for Val Kilmer, which makes sense because he looks like him and, sounds a lot like him too. But I thought, oh, that would have been awesome if they just brought them back for that one scene just to kind of riff again. Because if you look at the way they play off of each other in that scene, but see, that's the thing about Shane Black is all of his stuff is very acerbic and very playful, but he also finds a way to move the plot forward, which, I'm glad he did that along with Drew Pearce as the screenwriters for Iron Man 3. So I hope he has another seat in the continued Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I don't know if if he will.
If not, at least we'll get a kick-ass Predator movie out of it at some
Exactly,
point.
because he got that greenlit. I mean, I liked Predators, but only the last 45 minutes of it. When it came down to like everything was riding on the schnoz. Like I can't stand Adrian Brody for anything, but that's the one movie I'll watch him in.
Yeah, I don't know if I had a bigger problem with him or with Topher Grace.
Well, Topher, I knew right away. You could tell he was going to be a punk.
But it was an interesting idea that it picked a serial killer
Yeah.
as a monster to try to hunt.
Yes.
So I liked that idea that it wasn't just a bunch of. I mean, they could have easily, it could have been like a Sons of Anarchy extra.
Yeah.
It could have been
Kim Coates.
It could have just been some
Tigger.
some sort of biker with a chain and a sawed off and
Yeah.
some skinhead type dude.
They didn't go for the obvious.
Right. So they went with the silent type serial killer, which is an interesting idea. It's just Topher Grace is kind of like a douchebag and everything.
Well, I mean, I think that's what his forte is, and I mean, I think he, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for him, he won't be doing those kind of roles that I can see, those comic-centric or those roles that are part of fan-favorited, cult status movies, because I think he pretty much burned a lot of bridges when he was Eddie Brock as Venom. Well, not even the Venom, he was the what do you call it? He embodied Venom, but he wasn't truly, he was just,
Right.
I don't think he was the Venom, he was just
No.
overcome by the parasite.
Yeah, it's the two of them together that become Venom. But I
Right.
mean, I thought that was fine. I mean, it worked out. It's just you have these movies where they're rushing to take off the mask at every chance, and it's just. Plus, the movie was already crowded with Sandman, and then you had Green Goblin again.
Yeah, unnecessarily, I thought. Because I thought that whole arc could have been taken care of without Green Goblin showing his ugly face, one more time. But not even his ugly face as much, it was just his son at this point, Harry Osborn. But, I mean, that whole movie felt uneven to me. It wasn't a shitty movie by any stretch. It was just wildly and tonally all over the place, and it just seemed like an experimental movie. It was almost as if, Sony told Sam Raimi, like, hey, yeah, you made us money with the first two, let's just see what you bring back this time. And I know that wasn't the case, because they gave him probably...
They forced Venom on him, didn't they?
I think so, because I think the plan was to at least
Like the
introduce
Vulture?
it. I don't know. Did they?
I thought I had seen something about it at one point, but I don't know. You said something about RoboCop earlier.
Yes. So
Are you talking about new RoboCop?
new RoboCop, of course. I mean, the first RoboCop's untouchable, in my opinion. I'm not even going to talk about, I'm not even trying to draw comparisons to the two, because it's a moot point, as Joey Tribbiani would say. It's a moot point to talk about the two, because they're two different beasts, in my opinion.
Right. One's from the 80s and one's more about today's world.
Not even that. They're two. The more recent movie to me is a straight up action movie with satirical content. The first movie is a complete satire with action adventure elements in it, or action and gore. That's the way I think they kind of hold the same polarity. Okay, from the first minute on screen, the first movie. I just said I wasn't comparing the two, but Jesus Christ. The first moments when we see the ads and the news, we know right away this world is an exaggerated version of 1980s America, right? Well, not even 1980s in America. It was, 2002 or something like that? It was in the future, or 1990 something.
It was 90-something,
Yeah,
I think.
so it was maybe within 5 to 10 years in the future, just like the new one is. A little bit over a decade in the future. So,
Well, it kind of started out with that,
it did with
Sam Jackson as his Bill O'Reilly type character, where he's being.
But I think it only used that as an anchor just to get us into the worldscape, because I don't think it used it as a satirical.
Right, he wasn't trying to make a point with that.
No.
He was just
This is the
laying
world.
down the groundwork of, okay, this is the world where
Drones do everything
robots
for us.
can
and robots
do everything, and this corporation wants to make money off it.
Exactly. And so, whereas I thought the first RoboCop was just, you're an idiot if you believe in corporatism, and you're part of the problem, not a part of the solution. That was one of the things, like, even as a kid, I was like, wow, corporations suck. And, I mean, I didn't turn into, like, a revolutionary or anything as a result, but I just knew the violence in the movie was a direct result of the violent economic tactics, if you will, of OCP. And so I love that movie, and I refuse to talk about, like, I don't want to do more, comparisons between them, because, again, they're two complete different beasts, in my opinion. The new one, I think, was fantastic because of the fact that, like both of them, they did kind of talk about some very difficult subject matter. In this movie, the difficult subject matter is, are we heading down a path where robotics of any kind overrun our lives, and what happens if a corporation takes over? And we all know, I mean, this is not like, conspiracy talk, put on your tinfoil hats. The purpose of a corporation is to make money. They have moments of charity, they have moments of true philanthropy, but by and large, my opinion is most corporations are there to make themselves money and other people who invest in them money. Nothing else. Humanity, in my opinion, seems to get stripped out of them at some point. And when you remove the checks and balances and the ethical aspects, and you just go too far into the corporate world, that's when we have something that the new RoboCop shows us. And it's an interesting concept. I like the fact that they actually just kept the brain and part of his one part of his arm that still worked.
Wasn't that a nightmare scene when they
they showed
away,
everything,
they
and he was just hanging
the
there,
armor, and
just
it's
meat hanging,
it's his lungs, it's his hand,
and his brain
it's
and
his
stem.
brain and his face.
Yeah,
and it's horrifying, and he sees it in the way he's like,
he wants to vomit.
He's just like, how could you do this to me? Don't ever show this to me again.
Yeah,
please. And I thought that scene was great, and it was without the gore of, scene in the first one where he gets his hand blown off.
Right.
And
there was a lot of gratuity in the first movie.
Right, and I was really happy that this one,
was realistically
didn't
violent
use it
in a
as a
sense.
crutch.
No.
You didn't have all the swearing, and you didn't have, all the gore. I mean, I'm not a prude about any
exactly,
of that stuff.
we're not prude.
But when you don't need it, don't use it.
Exactly. And that's what I appreciated about this movie, is that it did, even though it did have preachy moments, it almost did borderline a little too many times on, Michael Keaton, like, brushing his, or, twisting his beard or twisting his mustache. But that was the beautiful thing I thought about Michael Keaton, was that his performance was so fucking subtle. It wasn't until the very end that he became over the top because he had to be over the top. He was a guy pushed to the brink. He put himself in that situation, but he was finally pushed to the brink. But he wasn't over the top at all. He wasn't, again, the over the top Dan O'Hurley performance in the first movie was necessary because of the tone of the movie.
Right.
It was a comic book in a way. It was a satirical comic.
Yeah, he needed to be shaking his fist at people. And
Exactly. But this one, I think, and it's hard, to, I think, for some to imagine the idea of like, oh, so big buildings are going to be guarded by Ed 209 size robots. I don't know. Maybe. This seemed plausible. That's the whole thing I liked about it. This seemed completely plausible, and it seemed plausible that if we have aerial drones doing the dirty work from afar, why wouldn't we have Sentinel-type devices commanded by one or two human leads, like the Jackie Earle Haley character, go in and direct all the ground dirty work, whether it's keeping the peace with civilians or actually doing door-to-door kicking. That seemed more realistic than anything. So there was a certain brutality that even though they didn't show blood and guts, there was a certain level of, oh my God, like your brain had to put it together that these things, they don't have a reaction. And that's what the politician was trying to say.
Right.
They're not going to have a reaction because they don't have to.
They would shoot through a child to get to an enemy combatant because that's the most efficient thing.
Exactly. It's computations that rule, not compassion. Right. Which I thought was very specific because that's a lot of the arguments we hear nowadays, or in today's climate of, well, what about collateral damage. It's like, look, if the most efficient way is to take out a moving caravan of what we would call enemy combatants or terrorists, and it happens to be in range of, a group of peaceful caravans, and they get hurt or taken out, that's collateral damage. That's war that's war, my friend. And that's an interesting thing to say from afar, but this movie showed, I think, some of the uglier sides without actually showing the ugly side, without the viscera and the blood. Don't get me wrong, the first movie, I loved the blood and viscera. That was part of the joy. And that was the thing, is we had bloodlust. I think the audience was allowed to have bloodlust in the first movie, and I think what some critics got angry with was there was no joy in the violence in this movie that I saw. I didn't see the joy.
Well, you shouldn't take joy in violence.
But we did, I think. I think we were allowed to, because of the satirical nature in the first movie, we were like when Emil got it. We wanted to see that guy fucking melt.
Right, or where they
apart,
when the guy gets it in the boardroom.
Yes.
And it's like 30 seconds of him just being plugged by Ed 209.
And just turning into like a big, meat popsicle, just flying everywhere. And that was, I think, part of it was because we understood going in, oh, I get it. Number one, these guys are assholes and they deserve to die. But number two, it's a heightened environment. This one confronted us with a lot of interesting questions that I don't know if people wanted to even think about in a movie, let alone when they walked out of the movie. And to me, not to make it a racial thing, but the juxtaposition of someone like Samuel Jackson playing what we normally see as a white angry man on Fox News or those types, but having a black man turn into this this machine, if you will, this machine of propaganda, was very interesting to me. The movie took place in 2028, I believe, which is only going to be, 14 years away in our timeline? Like we're a story. But that was very interesting because we don't necessarily, unless we talk about Herman Cain, but even then he got shut down pretty quick when he was running, or Mike Steele, and even then he got shut down pretty quickly. We don't see a lot of minorities, specifically African Americans, who have power in their voice. And for all intents and purposes, wherever you disagree or agree with that character's point of view, he had a voice. And that's interesting because it swayed the public opinion, or was designed to sway the public opinion in that movie. So I thought that was really interesting to it. So,
well, one of my favorite things about it, like you mentioned humanity, I loved that in this version, he never stopped being a husband and father.
No, exactly.
That drove him, that helped him overcome them robbing him of his spirit and his soul with that programming that would kick in to make him think he was in control.
Yeah.
And I loved the little moments that he had with his family. And I loved, like when he's still in China, when they're first testing him out and everything. And it's just after the nightmare scene where you see what's left of him. Yeah. And he's like, just kill me. Tell them it didn't work. Yeah. And Oldman tells him, do you really want to put your family through that? Because they're the ones...
we thought we saved you.
Yeah, they signed you up for this because they love you and they want you back. You're really going to put them through that again? And because of that, he decides to go on. And then, when he gets back home, he has that moment with his son when he goes to the house. And, the son says something real simple like, hey, Dad, I recorded all the Detroit Red Wing games.
Yeah, that was tough.
And, and he asks him, well, how did it turn out? And the kid says, I waited for you. Yeah. So that I could watch him with you. And as a father, it might be hokey to other people, but it was very effective to me.
But that's a real moment. Because, and that's what and you're right, because I think that was, and I remember reading the reviews, people were like, oh, but the most important scene in the first RoboCop was when he went to his empty house and played back memories of his family. And I was like, but this is where he actually still has a family, and he actually has moments where they're trying to override those memories with false memories, with fake memories, whereas he's trying to hold on to the memories, i.e. his humanity. And again, I don't want to compare the two, but I thought for this movie, the stuff that we see is very effective. And again, I think that a lot of people weren't prepared for this movie because it's a great movie on many levels, but it's flawed in some areas. And just some of the stuff that I thought was a little flawed was that whole scene inside the the whole Jackie Earl Haley, can you beat my bots scene.
Yeah, that
It was a little unnecessary, but I
was a little
think
goofy,
that was a
yeah.
sizzle reel. I think that was to get people in the audience into the seats saying, "Oh, he's going to blow stuff up real good," and it did. It showed us some pretty good combat between himself and those, Android type devices, not Android devices. Those what the hell did they call them? Not replicants, but
No, they were just like, I think they just called them drones.
yeah, they were upright drones. I guess I don't know. But whatever those beings or those creatures,
Those sentries or
yeah,
whatever.
the sentries, yeah. I mean, that was cool for that, but that to me was the biggest, because the choice of music they had, and it was, I forget the group, but it's this. Remember when Lyle and Han used to have, that was their opening?
Yes, that's what it was from.
Yes, and I kept thinking, where do I know this song? That was that was their opening. It was a radio DJ in San Antonio,
Right.
and they would play that piece, and it just stuck out to me like. The pacing of the
Yeah.
movie was so great, and then that scene as a whole came in, and it drug it down. When, again, I get the feeling it was supposed to be like, this is our moment of catharsis for just a moment, where he goes through all this shit, and we get to see him just take his vengeance, out on these things.
And especially on Jackie
Earl Haley.
Haley, after that earlier scene where he makes him go through that little simulation and he's playing
Yeah,
that Tin Man song, and
Yeah.
he keeps calling him Tin Man.
yeah,
So, that was a little payoff that was deserved, I thought. The
Yeah.
way at the end, he shocks him with it and then moves on. But I still really like how he holds on to who he was
yeah,
and how he uses that to overcome the stuff.
yeah,
And, goes on and, actually tries to solve his murder.
Yes, that was unique,
And
I thought.
arrest people.
Yeah.
Unlike in the first one where he was like,
executioner.
these are the people who killed me, I'm going to kill them.
Yeah.
Which, that's not really the law,
Yeah.
Officer Murphy.
Yeah.
You should be arresting these
And
people.
again, the heightened sensibility of the first movie, I think, allowed us, and we wanted that. We wanted that blood. That's the bloodlust I was talking about too.
Yeah, he's shooting rapists in the balls on the street
Hey,
in the
man,
first one.
that's pretty righteous to me. But this movie, like you said, it gave us something new in that he was solving his own murder. And I like that to me, it did not transmit everything a mile away. I mean, yeah, we kind of knew that those asshole guys were involved. Like, the first time I saw them, I was like, oh, these assholes, these are the guys. But the way they brought it about within the context of the narrative, I thought was interesting, because he had to understand who they were. He knew, he had a feeling, but the way everything else came together, and I'm not going to lie, another weakness was I saw that their boss was in on it. Like, I saw that shit, spoilers, I saw that shit a mile away. But it was revealed, I think, really nicely. So, we should probably put a spoiler tag at the beginning just because of some of the things we
I don't
talk
think
about.
anybody wants to see that new RoboCop.
You don't
movie,
think?
which is a shame.
It's a good movie. It's,
It,
as
it
we're,
got,
as
it
we're
got,
talking about.
It got beaten up by critics who
Yeah.
were unfairly,
Holding it up to the original.
comparing it to the original. And I think a lot of these critics that we read anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of them have families and kids. So
Well,
that stuff
some of
usually,
them might, but yeah, you're right.
a lot of that stuff, falls deaf on them.
Well, but to be fair, I was still just as moved, I believe, and I'm a single. Hear that, ladies? I'm single, but you're right though. There were certain elements you could definitely see were kind of geared towards not geared towards the family, but those who had families probably would feel it differently than those who didn't, perhaps. But I truly think they were hoping for something completely different, because I think a lot of people still had Aronofsky's plan to do it. They had that idea that Aronofsky was going to do it someday, and he didn't. And now they're like, well, this Brazilian guy better not fuck it up. And because I think this guy did. Didn't he do City of God, or Children of God? Hang on, I have my trusty laptop right here, so I should be looking shit up as I'm like, well, didn't this guy do this? We have technology.
I think he was at one point attached to a BioShock movie too, wasn't he? Or
This
no,
guy?
No, I'm thinking of
Well, that's Gore Verbinski.
No. After Gore Verbinski, there was another guy.
Oh, maybe this is the guy.
Fresnadillo or what's his name?
Fresnadillo? Something like that?
I don't know, but going back on this critics and no family thing, it kind of reminds me of one of my favorite video games, God of War, right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of game critics who are younger guys, no kids, they're like, you know, Kratos is an a-hole. I don't understand why he's so angry all the time. The gods tricked him into killing his wife and daughter.
Yeah.
You'd be pissed off too.
Right.
You know, you'd spend the rest of your life trying to kill these bastards.
Yeah.
They got you to kill your family. So I think that's one of my problems with critics is, you know, a lot of times it seems like
They nitpick something that in the larger context really doesn't hold water, as far as the way I look at it. Oh, I'm sorry. This guy did that Elite Squad. That's the one you saw.
oh, Elite Squad was great.
Yeah, he did. That's the one you guys saw at the BNet. Yeah, and he did the sequel to it as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, when people saw his name attached to it, I think that also that hurt because they had these expectations that it was going to be Elite Squad again.
Yeah,
Except in a RoboCop suit, how badass would that be?
right.
Well, you know, I think he still made a great RoboCop movie.
Oh, he did. He made to me he made a 21st century RoboCop movie, and I think that's one big difference is that's why I kind of think they're two different beasts. Is the first movie is it's a product of the 20th century and the fear of what we're going to go into in the 21st century, and this is the fear realized if you think about it. So it's not quite a sequel in any way. I'm not trying to say that, but it is the fear that I think they kind of had of this sterile, dehumanized form, you know, of form of society, which is kind of what we have. It looks the same, very much, but it is definitely that nightmare. I think that they were kind of trying to steer away from in the first movie, but they were showing us. So this movie only made a total of right under 60 million US, but the budget was right at 100 million. So I guess we're not going to see another one.
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, it's a shame. To me, it's really a shame.
Unless somebody, you know, reboots in 5 years or something like that.
Right. Or, I mean, I think this one should have a sequel, if anything, just to... you know what? I take it back. If they do have a sequel, okay. But it needs to continue along the lines of there's a viable threat in the city, people need to go ahead and, you know, we need to save people versus just a rehash of let me solve my own murder again kind of a thing. No, let's try to actually maybe stop the clock and like there's a race against time to try to save somebody or a group of people. So kind of played a little bit differently. That little boy though, I've seen him somewhere. He reminded... No, I'm thinking of somebody else. Never mind.
But how badass did he look in the old school version of the suit, the silver suit?
I preferred... I was like, oh, they're going to do it. And then no, they just gave him the tactical look. Which the tactical look was cool, but I think it was even cooler to have the older look to him.
Yeah, he looked way more intimidating in that suit.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, you know, you had Keaton's character where he's like, you know what, let's put him in black. You know, which you could totally see, like some exec somewhere with his notes, and he thinks he knows what's better. You know, but still, even that scene was a great scene that they focus tested the look, you know, and it wasn't like, you know, they put him in different suits so that they could sell you different toys.
No.
They put him in different suits because if you're spending a lot of money, you're going to focus test.
Right. I mean, I didn't realize it was a $100 million movie. It looked like a $100 million movie, but wow. That's a lot of, wow.
Well, hopefully it'll do real well in Blu-ray. I mean,
I hope
some
so.
of us bought it.
Well, okay. I saw Blu-ray copy. Okay. The print I saw was in Blu-ray quality.
I mean, I bought it the day it came out because, you know, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't.
I wanted to talk about, because I think you asked me and I offered to provide you with a viewing copy of Snowpiercer.
Oh, I want to see that.
I oddly have yet to watch it.
I hear it's BioShock on a train.
That's exactly what it was sold to me as, which I was like, really? And because the guy who gave it to me, one of my coworkers and friends here, he told me, yeah, it's just like Bioshock. It's like a video game on a train, but specifically like Bioshock, just the way they go through. It's like almost like an abandoned society on a train, kind of a thing that they have to fight through. But it's a nonstop fight. The other thing I also heard it compared to was The Raid. It's like The Raid on a train, which unfortunately I still have yet to see the first one.
I have it, and I haven't seen it because I saw Dread, which I heard is just like The Raid. And if you give me The Raid, but with Judge Dredd in it,
Why not?
why do I need to see the other one?
Right,
Because I got Dread,
right.
and Carl Urban kicks ass in that movie.
Well, he kicks ass because he's finally the Dredd he should have been, meaning the one that we saw in high school in the 90s was just an ego boost for Stallone, unfortunately, and where he wasn't even in the helmet, but what, 10 minutes of the movie at most?
The helmet looked great.
It would have been better if he kept the helmet
It would
on.
have been great if he'd have kept it
The
on.
only time the helmet should have come off was when he was kidnapped by the clan, the cannibal clan.
Right.
And then he would have gotten angry because they took off the helmet. And that could have been a cool joke that he kills them because they took his helmet off, or something to that effect,
Yeah. But I liked in that new Dread that he has the helmet off in the beginning.
Right.
But you don't see him.
Right.
And other than that, the rest of the movie, helmet's on.
Yep.
And
And it was an intense movie, and I think that was PG-13 too, wasn't it? Or was it hard R?
no, it was rated R. I mean,
Oh,
that guy
really?
gets his face melted in the first 5 minutes.
Oh, that's true.
This is such an awesome movie.
Well, that's unfortunate that I haven't seen it again on Netflix or anything like that. Because I had it on my Netflix queue. I don't even know if it's still on Netflix. But that was a great movie. I still need to see the first Raid, and I hear the Raid 2 is intense as all hell and great. So as I think the Raid 2 just got put on Netflix, and I went looking for the first Raid, and it was gone already. So I was really bummed. But I have Snowpiercer, and I need to watch it. Because again, I've seen interesting articles that are deconstructing its deeper meanings, and I love movies that draw me into that, mainly because I'm an English major, and we look into text that doesn't exist, the subtext and the obvious text. It's just something that our little brains do. So I definitely want to see that, and you're more than welcome to view it at some point with me.
I think I'll rent it off the PlayStation Network.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I will support the film
In that way.
in a different way.
In a different way. Because I would probably go buy it if I really enjoy it.
Well, if it were available,
It's not available
to
yet.
straight up buy on Blu-ray, I would probably just buy it.
Straight up.
Yes.
Well, speaking of that, another two shows, now transitioning into TV really quickly. I mentioned it to you, but I don't know if you were interested in at any point watching it. I know once I save money and I can splurge on a few things, I'm going to buy the Blu-ray set of True Detective.
I really want to see that.
Again, I'm offering you a way to see it, but I do want you to see it because I want to talk about it, and I would maybe be the topic of a future cast because I'm sitting through my 6th viewing of it, and it's like, to me, fresh every time. Every time I'm finding something new going, oh, I didn't catch that the first time.
You're just watching it for that nudity.
Well, there's a lot of that, my
And
friend.
I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do, and I'm surprised you know about it. Well, I'm not
Well,
really
of
surprised.
course I know. I had a friend offer me their HBO Go password
Just to see.
just so that I
Sad
would
nudity.
watch True Detective and talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have anybody else to talk to about it because all of his other friends are
Ultra conservative.
that and religious, and I'm the only one that he can talk about soda and cuss words with. So
Yeah. Well, I do believe, I could see why your friend, who I think you're talking about, might have a hard time finding viewing partners and discussion partners, because this is, I don't know how much of H.P. Lovecraft you're familiar with, but this is like, to me, True Detective is an H.P. Lovecraft story come to life. And I don't think that was the intention. But again, I'm one of those people who reads into the text way too much. So I see things that may not be intended by the artist, but that's what they call the death of the artist, I guess, is where you're allowed to, in the modernist and postmodernist world, allowed to attach your own beliefs to this kind of a thing. It's a great, great, great series, I think.
I might have a different definition of what Lovecraft is, because you say that, and I think of tentacled monsters and demons hiding beneath the surface.
Well, you're not far off.
Not necessarily just really bad people.
Well, you're not. The reason why I say it evokes Lovecraft is one of the great things about the Lovecraft universe, and it actually extended into Robert E. Howard's work, because Lovecraft and Howard were great friends and they were pen pals and they would exchange ideas about literature and writing and their stories. There is what I guess we could call, I hear it different ways and I've said it myself different ways when I describe it, a cosmic nihilism, where it's like, or as cosmic indifference, where you as an earthling, us as earthlings, are insignificant to the rest of the cosmos. Our suffering, our joy is nothing, because out there are these elder gods who control, at one point they controlled and still technically kind of control the fate of the universe without our ability to change it in any way, shape, or form. And there are elder gods who live below, but there are also elder gods in space.
So you're saying that the killer in True Detective believes himself an elder god?
Not necessarily.
But he exerts that kind of control and pressure?
He exerts this sense of dread because he's gone on for so long without being captured and destroyed so many lives in his wake, that there's a sense of danger, a palatable sense of danger, I would say, throughout the whole show, and unease. The world that H.P. Lovecraft creates is one of insanity. The line between sanity and insanity is the bat of an eye. That's how easily one can fall into the other, or fall from the other. And that's the kind of uneasiness that I think True Detective has. And it's got it is based in occult practices, very weird and esoteric, much like what we find in Lovecraft's work. Because, yeah, Lovecraft is known for the tentacled monsters, right? But what it also reveals is a lot of times the monsters, the greater monsters, and the greater threat to humanity are those who worship said deities. Because there are crazy killer cults in his stories. There are people who want to go after artifacts of these supposed old ones who will do anything to achieve. There's some great short stories. I mean, if you're ever interested, I have them. I had a book, but I can, find you a copy to read. But I'm not saying you have to know that in order to appreciate True Detective, because I think on any level, True Detective will, number one, first and foremost, probably depress the shit out of you. So you have to be prepared for that. But in a way that when you watch something, if it eats at you, to me, that's the mark of good art of any kind. Whether you play a game and the storyline stays with you, right? And you go, how could I have been forced to make a decision as a character to do that stuff, right? Much like you talked about Kratos, dealing with what he had to go through in his journey in Gods of War. And, those kind of, I remember you talking about that game all the time. And other games you've played, like, even The Walking Dead, exactly.
You gotta play The Walking Dead.
I am going to. I'm just afraid. I'm scared. And actually, you know what? The tone is probably very similar to The Last of Us, and that one that you might find in True Detective, because there is that kind of sense of almost like, what's the bother? Why bother even continuing? Because we know there's going to be nothing but pain and suffering along the way, and it may intensify as we go on. That's what crazy Matthew McConaughey is like in this movie, this show. It's very much like, this doesn't even fucking matter what you and I do. People are still going to die, and people are going to be even more cruel to each other as every year passes, kind of a thing, But then you have Woody Harrelson, even crazier Woody Harrelson and his big dick, swinging around, trying to play the perfect father or the perfect detective and stuff, and we get to see both of these characters contrasted in an interesting way against the backdrop of Louisiana of 1995 and forward, and it jumps around in time. So I think that's interesting. So I'll get back to you on that another time, whenever you have a chance, however you have the chance to view it. That's one show I definitely want to pick. But another show, when it comes out, I'm just straight up buying it because I'm in love with that show, is Silicon Valley. It's just, Kumail Nanjiani, we talked about him earlier, he's in it.
TJ Miller?
TJ Miller's, he's probably one of the best things of the show. Like, I never really, not that I didn't like him, but I love him times 1,000 now because of this show. And the main character kind of annoys me, but I still dig his character. And the guy who played Gabe on The Office, the creepy guy with the big doe eyes who looks like a serial killer,
Yeah.
he's just as creepy in this show, but effective in this show. So, again, I can make it possible for you to view those at any time. Just let me know. So, something to think about. So, I mean, kind of bringing things around again and kind of wrapping things up. I mean, the point of this, I believe, is just to discuss as much pop culture as possible, whether it be in the form of a video game, a book, a comic, movie, television show. However, I also think that if something strikes our fancy and we text each other to say, hey, we have to talk about this, just to see what the barometer happens to be, then I think that we should do that. So I know I've had fun talking about this. We haven't really had a chance to talk like this in quite a while. We used to do this kind of free-form, deconstructive type of discussions. So what do you think? What do you feel like the next episodes will kind of cover or be like, maybe, perhaps?
Well, I mean, what do we got coming up here? I mean, I'm going to see Guardians of the Galaxy.
I have to at some point. I don't know when.
So, I mean,
I don't have money to do it, otherwise I would do it.
That's something good to talk about. I mean, what else do we have coming up? I mean, I'm going to be wrapped up this fall, and, Destiny comes out on PS4.
Really cool. That looks really cool.
I've never played Diablo, but that's coming out soon. I'm going to get that.
Wait, it's on a console?
Yeah. It's coming out in the middle of August, I think.
Wow.
And then you got, that new Call of Duty game where Kevin Spacey's, like this power-hungry guy.
Dick Cheney.
And then you got another Dragon Age game. And then in November, you have the remakes of all these Halo 1 through 4, which I'm going to have to try to resist to not buy because I don't need an Xbox One. But, I mean, starting like mid-August, everything for me is going to be about video games.
Right.
Basically. But, Walking Dead's coming back.
Oh.
That's going to be something great to talk about.
God.
And at some point, I need to get into the graphic comics. I kind of had been holding off on it, and now seeing, that the stories are kind of different.
Right.
I feel like if I do read the graphic
You won't
comics,
have anything spoiled.
Yeah, I won't have too much spoiled because, there's already huge differences. I mean, characters like Daryl don't even exist in the comics, which, if he stops existing in the show, I will stop watching the show.
it. Yeah, I think they know better. And if they do it, they better literally tell people at Comic-Con, hey, Daryl's going to die this season, so just get yourself ready, and it's going to be badass or something, because there's no way that show will live without Daryl.
Yeah,
No way.
If he dies, he needs to die
He literally needs to die.
He needs to kill everybody while he dies.
He needs to have a fucking 3 megaton bomb strapped to his chest, dropped from an airplane, and just takes out an entire part of the world or something.
When he goes, it needs to be like the end of that one Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah.
Where
They hit the button and it just all goes up.
He happens into
beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah,
the cult.
That underground complex, and he finds the bomb and he hits that button with his last breath, and the earth just shatters.
Yep.
And then the show ends.
That has to be
That would be the perfect way to kill Daryl.
Yeah.
The only way to pay him respect is to just have him destroy
Just
everything.
destroy humanity, because we all owe him a huge debt. So, well, that's going to be it for today. We don't quite yet have our official title, so stay tuned for an opener and a closer with our title. But until next time, I'm Jay.
And I'm Mike.
Until then.